Do we hate conservatives? I'm not going to be one of those people who claims that I hate nobody. I hate people. And there are a number of conservative politicians and donors who, like, in the trolley problem, doesn't matter which group they're in, I'm aiming the trolley at them. But when it comes to conservative voters, what is the word you have for the guy who breaks into your home and smashes a bunch of things, all so that he can steal a couple $100 worth of stuff so that he can pawn them for drugs? Do you hate that guy, or do you feel sorry for him? Or is it a little bit more nuanced and we don't really have a word for that emotion? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm mad at the person if they break into my home, regardless of whether or not they're addicted. I'm not going to pretend I'm so enlightened as to just be nonplussed. But would I rather them simply be imprisoned, or would I rather them be restrained and put in an environment that would foster real rehabilitation? Which, in many cases, we don't actually have that in Canada. I want the second one. Just because someone hurt or harmed me, I don't always want them to be harmed. Though, in so, like, if you do something to kids, I'm sure. Likewise, I get upset and I get frustrated with conservatives. Their rhetoric is often readily unkind. They say truly insensitive things, and they think the things they're saying are normal and reasonable in part because a lot of them are addicted to conservative propaganda. And that's not a euphemism, that's not a metaphor. They are craving certain chemicals in their brain to stave off the boredom they're experiencing in their daily life. The chemicals they feel when they're angry and upset are more interesting than when they're bored. And they're easier to access than the chemicals that the brain releases when you go for a walk or spend time with friends. You don't have to get off the couch and actually have executive function. You just have to turn on Fox News and then, feel hatred for imaginary things. And of course, the more someone is stuck in a conservative echo chamber, the more the only people who they will spend time with are other conservatives who they bond with over how much they hate the imaginary things that they believe the rest of us are doing. Oh, did you hear the crazy libs are having kids use litter boxes? Wow, I feel not bored anymore. When you're suffering from an addiction to right wing stimulus, the truth doesn't matter. They feel good when they believe they're better than the people who have kids poop in litter boxes. And you know what? They are better than those people because those people don't exist. Now, don't get me wrong. Just because right wing politicians, their donors, and propagandists are exploiting these people, that doesn't absolve them of responsibility for the way they perpetuate the cycle. You know what the weird thing is? If you talk to these people about something other than politics, they're often wonderfully kind people. It's weird. I know because I've spent the last few years doing tech support and I spoke with a lot of American conservatives, often from the southern states. And we'd often have really nice and civil conversations. Sometimes I'd end up completely off topic on conversations with them while we waited for their computer to finish doing something. And they'd talk about how they volunteered with things like food banks, how they take care of elderly family members, this, that, and the other thing. Now, I don't want to say that they were all around nice. I don't want to paint a picture of conservatives as if they're all secretly nice little old ladies who want to make me pie, though some of them do. Some are miserable louts 100% of the time, and they don't seem to realize that them being miserable all the time is probably why nobody wants to be around them. But I want you to remember that while there are real monsters, full stop, some people are irredeemable monsters, and a lot of them are either politicians or influencers or CEOs. A lot of everyday conservative people aren't evil. They're conforming to the shape of the tank they're in, and people have intentionally built those tanks to make them that way. They exist in a state of paranoia and distrust of others, not because they want to be insufferable, but because they've learned bad habits that were required to belong in their families and communities, and they don't know how to, and they don't have the energy really to learn how to be different. And that's not to say you need to try and save any of these people. Most of the time, when you interact with someone, especially online, there's no right answer. Especially online, they might not be a real human. Like, there are a lot of bots out there. In a lot of cases, you're never going to know the right thing to say to open their eyes because that probably isn't on the table. There's probably nothing you could say. Their worldview has been shaped and reshaped so many times and in so many ways that they fundamentally see you as the enemy. And unless you're really trained in dealing with people from cults and whatnot, there's nothing you can do. And even if you do break through for a little bit, when they're alone and bored, they're going to fill their veins with more fox as soon as they're alone. Habits are hard to break, and admitting that you've been manipulated by big money propagandists for years can be humiliating. I know for a lot of us, admitting that you're wrong when presented with evidence doesn't feel that hard, Like, oh, I'll just change my mind and now I'm right. Yay. But the longer you've believed a lie and the more that it's ingrained itself into your identity, the harder it can be to let go. Oddly enough, some of these lies make people feel really safe, especially if they're in economically disadvantaged communities. That's one of the reasons why conservatives are often so quick to vote against their own interests, because their own politicians have intentionally impoverished them, in part because they know that impoverished people will continue to vote for them because that's what they do and they don't really want to think too much about why their life is the way that it is. So this isn't me telling you to try and save anybody. Maybe a few times in your life you'll talk to somebody like that and you'll be able to be kind and gracious and cause them to question some of their beliefs. And if so, that's great. But also you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be frustrated and you're allowed to feel hurt. But especially these days, maybe just be careful about what voices you listen to and be careful about what the voice you choose to have is. When you're outraged, are you outraged at the puppets or are you outraged at the puppet master? I know it can be difficult, especially if you've recently had a puppet right in your face, but we don't win anything by ripping apart a puppet. We win when the strings are cut and they learn to stand on their own and think for themselves.